All right, you guys, the first round of the NBA playoffs is a wrap. We talked about the 4 losers in the Western Conference. Well, now we're going to talk about the 4 losers in the Eastern Conference. That's the Celtics, that's the Hawks, that's the Raptors, and that is the Orlando Magic. And so what should these teams do now? What now, right? The season's over. Some feel good, some don't feel great. So what to do now? So who do we start with? Let's go ahead and start with the Atlanta Hawks. So they were the first Eastern Conference team to be eliminated. The way I see the Hawks playing out is the future is bright, right? Atlanta is in a solid situation. They got rid of Trae Young. They didn't want to pay him, so they made the smart move, moved early, got rid of him, got CJ McCollum back. And guess what? CJ McCollum had a great season with Atlanta. They had a nice little playoff run. They lost to the Knicks in 6. It was ugly. I know. They got smacked in game 6 at home. But CJ McCollum, if anything, has some stock now. So if I'm the Hawks, what do I do? Well, you know what I would do? I would trade CJ McCollum, okay? Because he is not the guy to have with this young core, right? You have Jalen Johnson who showed up. You have some young players on that team that I think, frankly, are going to be great in the coming years. So, I mean, well, let's go through them, right? Jonathan Kuminga, you traded for. He's kind of a wild card because he has games where he looks incredible, and then he has games where he just puts up dud, right? But Dyson Daniels, pretty solid player. Ricochet, the number 1 pick that you guys got, or number 2 pick, that might be a bust, okay? Because he couldn't even really get much playing time when down the stretch there, even when they were getting smacked around. But with teams that are in this situation and when they have their clear lead guy, I guess, because Jalen Johnson took a step in the right direction. He made his first all-star team. And again, with him and Dyson Daniels and Kuminga and Onyeka Okongwu, like you got pieces there, right? Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a great free agent acquisition. They got Corey Kispert in the trade with Trae Young, so that's a shooter. So they've got some pieces there. And yes, you can keep CJ McCollum and you can keep, Gabe Vincent and Jock Landale and these guys, but you got to start planning ahead for the future. And realistically, with CJ McCollum there, like, look, the one thing I will say is what I don't like that teams do sometimes, and I would not recommend Atlanta to do this, is to do something stupid where they trade away future assets because they think they're right there. They're knocking on the door. They don't have patience, and they start trading away some young pieces to get a guy like Kevin Durant or something to come there and suddenly try to take them to the next step. Like, guys, you overachieved. You had to win like a whole bunch, 15 out of 20 games or something ridiculous like that towards the end of the season just to make the playoffs. So, like, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Like, the Atlanta Hawks are in a good situation. And with the realistic trajectory, say this year, the expectation was when they traded Trae Young was that they weren't even going to make the playoffs. So you overachieved. So keep that in mind. So next year, if this young core improves, plays better, and you end up being the 5th seed in the East and you lose to the 4th seed, similar to how Toronto played against Cleveland, and it goes to 7, and those young guys got better, and let's say you got a draft pick now that contributed, that's good. Like, you're on the right path. Don't try to just get it all at once. And teams I've seen do that that's a huge mistake in my opinion, right? So you got a good free agent, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Again, if you can re-sign CJ McCollum, and then use them as a trade piece so that you can prep for 3 to 4 years from now, when you're being realistic, in my opinion, that's the smartest thing to do. Too many teams look for that instant gratification. Let's get the championship right now or next season. And it just, for that to happen is highly unlikely, right? Like the Kawhi Leonard to Toronto deal only worked because they had veteran players on the team. So it's not like they were forfeiting a young core at the time. The guy they traded away was DeMar DeRozan. It's not like he was, a young guy anymore. So again, like that worked out there. And even that, the chances of that ending up in a championship for Toronto were risky, right? But they didn't mortgage the future. They got a veteran there. If it was for one season, like a 1-year rental. So just don't do that, Atlanta. Be smart. Take your time. This is how teams, grow. I mean, I know it's not popular right now to talk about it because they just got bounced in the first round with the Boston Celtics, but they won a championship. And many people in the past might have thought, let's pursue Anthony Davis. Let's pursue Kevin Durant. And if we have to give up Jaylen Brown, let's do it. But they waited. Those guys developed. And what's to say Jalen Johnson and Dyson Daniels can't become the next Tatum and Brown, right? And then you build around them for years to come. But for you to get to that situation, it takes patience. I have a feeling in this podcast, I'm going to talk about that a lot because a lot of these teams are in that situation. right? Again, so with Atlanta, I just think that they're in a fine situation. Quinn Snyder's a fine head coach. I don't think he did a wonderful job early in the season, but with the way that this team played towards the end, it bought them some time. If next year they don't make the playoffs or something, well, then maybe it's time to look for a new coach. But they're fine. They're fine. Good situation. They had a good year. You did the smart thing in getting off the Trae Young deal so that you could reload essentially with the new core. So I like it. Keep it up. Keep on track with that. All right, the next team. Let's talk about them right now. The Boston Celtics. It's I don't know if it's them or Denver because I had them facing off in the finals. What a terrible finals pick I had. But they might be the biggest disappointment for me in this playoffs. But at the same time, like I said constantly, you got to zoom out. You can't fall for the instant reaction suddenly and think, what a disastrous season for Boston. At the start of the year, people didn't even really think, some people didn't think that they would even make the playoffs because Jason Tatum was supposed to be out the whole season. He came back. He looked like himself. He had a minor setback there in Game 6, so now he couldn't play in Game 7. You lost Game 7, but you didn't lose Tatum for next year. It's a knee injury on the other knee, so it's fine. You avoided catastrophe by not playing him in Game 7. I think they realized that this roster just wasn't it. If it was taking you 7 games to beat a Philly team that didn't have Embiid for half the series, I think they realized, all right, I don't think we're going to beat the Knicks. It's not worth putting Tatum out there. Now, if he has a big setback, it's a disaster. So they have their core players in Tatum and Brown. Again, they either can be patient and let those other young guys develop. I mean, Pritchard's fine, but can you keep paying Pritchard? He might soon be gone. But as of right now, he's on a good deal. And I don't really know what you do if you're the Celtics. Do you make a quick move and try to, bring in another veteran and build with that? Or are you okay being patient? So that's what I'm saying. So right now, for example, if you're the Celtics, they can decide, let's get rid of the young talent. Let's get rid of Kata. Let's get rid of Baylor Shireman, and let's put Pritchard in the trade, and we'll get an all-star big to come in here. A frustrated guy that wants to play here. Now we got Tatum, Brown, and this big, and we got our big three. Well, what happens then if you don't win? You are out of your young assets. That was your window, and now you're just looking at going downhill, right? If you trade Derek White, all right, and then now what? Or you can retain your core with Tatum and Brown, realize that these guys, they're not young, but they're not old. They're young enough still that they can have another run in another few years. And you say, you know what? We're going to wait this out. Neemias Queta may grow into a very good player. Baylor Shireman's a young guy. Hugo Gonzalez, a rookie that had a pretty good campaign. Maybe we trade and make some moves around the margins, try to figure out a way to get out of this Nikola Vucevic deal or whatever. But we develop these young guys. We have our big payday guys in Tatum and Brown and Derek White. And you go with that. Or you trade Derek White, but get young guys back. That maybe next year is another disappointing season, but the young guys develop for the year after that. Again, I just think with a lot of these teams, Jordan Walsh played pretty good this season. They're not, elite playoff guys, but panicking and feeling like, oh my God, we didn't get past the first round with Tatum and Brown. What are we going to do now? Well, they're not at the end of their primes. These guys still have another 3 to 5 great years of basketball. You can be patient. So again, teams freak out. They try to make big panic moves, and sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. Look at the Rockets, right? What do they do now? So, and again, it's one of those things like now they're going to have to sell low on Kevin Durant. So again, I just think that, the Celtics for the most part, they don't have, I wouldn't even say they have bad contracts because Tatum and Brown are good contracts. Derek White, yeah, he struggled, but no one looks at that as a bad contract around the league. So it's either tradable or you can keep the good contract. I mean, Vucevic, yeah, bad contract maybe, but his contract's running out. So again, with the Celtics, don't freak out, guys. Yes, is it a disappointing year? Absolutely, because they're not a young team. So it's disappointing because, you started 3 young guys in that last Game 7, and they went scoreless. Shireman didn't score anything. Ron Harper Jr. didn't score anything. So, I forget who's the other guy. Luka Garza didn't score anything. 3 guys. So that's the alarming part. It's that the young guys didn't develop. So that's where you start thinking like maybe we need a different set of young guys. So but I wouldn't break it up. And I would just be patient with it and just build around those guys. They've proven that they can win with a good roster around them. So, that front office, I trust the Celtics front office too to not overreact and make it happen. All right. The final 2 teams to put to bed here are the Orlando Magic and the Toronto Raptors. Let's start with Orlando because I have a lot of thoughts about Toronto. Orlando, that's where most of the questions are for me. Remember, at the start of the year, many people thought this team would be a 50-win season. They barely stuck into the playoffs. People thought they were ready for the vacation. People thought they were ready for the season to end. They laid an egg in Philly in the first playing game, and then they showed up against Charlotte, right? They went up 3-1 in this series to the shock to everyone against the number 1 seed in the East, and then they blew that. And they blew Game 6. And really, honestly, and they had an important injury because Franz Wagner got injured, and at that point, it just went downhill. And they could not close out the Pistons, even with a 20-point lead at home. But Paolo's your guy, man. The guy showed up. He is a lead number 1 guy. You could see it. He's young. Like, he's got it in him. He showed up. He's a playoff riser. He's got that. The trade for Desmond Bane, you gave up like 3 first-rounders for him, and he was fine, but I don't think that paid dividends, right? So, again, Franz is relatively young as well. You got Tristan da Silva. You got Anthony Black, that's solid. Wendell Carter Jr. ain't that old. So, but really with them, I think they need a new coach. Okay, and that's the way I see it. I just think that the Orlando Magic got to move on from Jamal Mosley. There's been a lot of friction. I mean, people were saying he's going to be out of there the day the season ends. So I imagine, honestly, wouldn't be surprised if by tomorrow they're moving on and announcing that he's been relieved of his duties. I see Billy Donovan signing there, which I would like. I think he did an okay job with a very untalented Chicago Bulls team for a while. So I think you give him this kind of talent with Paolo at the forefront. Billy Donovan could do some stuff with this Orlando team. But they need to stay healthy. And that's been the biggest question. Jalen Suggs is great. Sometimes he looks like a younger Marcus Smart out there. Pest defensively, diving on loose balls, being, everything you need a dog to be. But he's always hurt too. So they got to figure that out. Tristan da Silva, maybe he comes on and improves. You need a guy like that. If he can take that next step, or Anthony Black can take another step, now you're talking. And they have good guys that they can make a move. Run this back with a new coach. See where you're at by the trade deadline. And honestly, at that point, if they're, the pushing to be the 1 seed in the East and you really feel like, hey, we're 1 guy away, you have enough young guys where you can make a move to bring in an unhappy vet. And, maybe that's the move then. Then Tristan da Silva has played better and you decide, all right, we can sacrifice this 1 young guy because your stars are young. So you can sacrifice the young guys when you have a lot of great young guys, including your superstars, because you have a timeline now where you have another chance to recoup. Like Paolo Banchero, if you want him to, he'll be your superstar for the next 10 years. So if you trade Tristan da Silva and Anthony Black to try to get a little window right here with Paolo and Desmond Bane and Franz as your main guys, and you get in a little 3-year championship window and it doesn't work out, and you need another 3 years to reset, yeah, well, you reset with new young guys and you still have Paolo there at a relatively good age to still be a main guy for you. So, not a bad situation to be, except I think they need a new coach and you need to make that move. And then obviously be patient. They're young. All right, Toronto. All right, last one, guys. Obviously, I follow the Raptors closely. I love how this team fought and battled. The problem with this team is that they have terrible contracts, okay, that are borderline untradeable. If this roster here was on average contracts or, normal salary deals, like if Jakob Poeltl was making $14 million a year and Emmanuel Quickley was making $18 million a year or $20 million a year, you'd be in great shape, because you would think to yourself, all right, Scotty Barnes, dog. Jamal Shed, dog. CMB, dog. Jacoby Walter, dog. We got our young dogs right there. And we got enough young guys that Emmanuel Quickley, we can trade you. You could, Jakob Poeltl, see you later. Let's bring in a real big in here. The problem is I mean, Yak is making like 20 plus million a year. That is brutal. You might not only would you have to attach a first round pick, they have the 19th pick in this year's draft. I think that even if you offer a team Yak and the 19th pick in the draft, you're not going to get anything back. You might get a project player back. And that's the problem. I mean, this core showed that they can play. Scotty Barnes is 24 years old. CMB, Colin Murray-Boyles, is 20 years old. Jacoby Walters, 21 years old. Jamal Shead is 23 years old. Right? But specifically, that Jakob Poeltl deal is horrible. Brandon Ingram, fine. You know, like, again, he wasn't healthy in the playoffs. He stunk when he was in there. You know, but in the regular season, he had a good regular season. The only thing with him is he's not a dog. But you can afford to have a soft guy in there that doesn't play defense when the other four guys do. That's fine, right? Like, that works sometimes. But that can't happen if you got these big salaries and you're basically just counting on these young guys to take the next step and work with what they got. And they were out talented in this playoff series against the Cavs. The effort was there, but you need major jumps from these guys if the roster stays the same, because it's not even their effort or their skill. Sometimes it's just the size. I mean, Jakob can't play. You can't put that guy out there against the Jared Allen. Clearly, you don't have a big body. You know, I kept hearing the Cleveland Cavaliers bigs have outplayed the Toronto Raptors bigs. I mean, do the Raptors have bigs? Is it Jakob Poeltl? That guy ain't playing like a big. He's soft. So, and I know this is unpopular, and Raptors fans are in their feelings about it because he's from Toronto, and RJ Barrett had the crazy bounce shot in Game 6. And I love RJ Barrett, and I wish nothing more than to have him be around for when this core goes on deep playoff runs. But this is the time to trade RJ Barrett, because you're about to have to pay him too. And like in football, you draft guys and you hope that they can exceed the expectation so that you can get them on great deals while they're still on their rookie contracts. Jacoby Walters showed up in these playoffs. I said he's 21 years old. You got to think he's going to take another step, right? So he's a guard. Why can't you start Jacoby Walters? Right? RJ Barrett, man, is great, but I don't even want to trade him. But when you are going to have to give up your first round pick just to be able to get rid of the Yak contract, like at that point, you might as well eat that contract and trade RJ Barrett, because that is where you can afford to lose. You can afford to lose RJ Barrett because you have a young guy on a cheap contract as a guard that can play his minutes. Does that bring it every next man up? Sure. Now AJ Lawson or Jamison Battle are going to have to become the Jacoby Walters. But AJ Lawson showed some stuff, right? I mean, you're going to have to get some cheap free agents like that to fill in those holes, because until you can get out of these contracts, there's no choice. Maybe the 19th pick, you can hit there. Maybe that pick can be a contributor and play the Jacoby Walters minutes this year, and Jacoby Walters plays the RJ minutes. But RJ has limitations. I love the guy, and the story's great, but, you know, he still isn't a good free throw shooter. And he's been around. It's not like he's going to develop. It's not like CMB. Even throughout the season, CMB has become a better free throw shooter. Scotty Barnes, his rookie year, second year, he was not a good free throw shooter. He is now. RJ's been this. So, again, I know it's not popular for Toronto, man, but this is your time to move him. He's your only tradable asset. He's already due for a contract, so maybe it's a sign and trade. It'll free you up some cap space. I'm not a fan of this. You can waive and stretch Yak and start paying him dead money, like $9 million a year for the next 8 years or something ridiculous like that, just to get out of that contract. And that'll free you up with like $12 million in cap space, because he's that bad. And I hate to do that, because that automatically means you're at a disadvantage than all the other teams. I've said this when the Bucks did this with Dame. And they waived and stretched Dame, and they're basically paying Damian Lillard $20 million a year. So at the beginning of the year, when there's a clean cap for every team, let's say, the Bucks are automatically have 20 million less to spend than all the other teams. So you know what that means? That means you better be drafting really, really well. And with Toronto, to be honest, they have drafted really well. So maybe that's what you have to do. Maybe you waive and stretch Yak just so you can keep your 19th pick in the draft. Because I don't see a team that's going to take on Jakob Poeltl and that horrendous contract that you didn't even have to give him. That was such a huge mistake. So again, Jamal Shed, he's like a Fred VanVleet, man. This guy's got guts. And also with him, with Jacoby Walter, with Colin Murray, Boyles, those guys are going to be hungry. You just see by the way that they play. All three guys are going to come back better next year. You just know that. So this is your time to try to capitalize and make a run with this core right now. And honestly, like I said with Paolo, you're young enough to where you can make a run the next 2-3 years. And if it doesn't work out, hey, you can reset and try another run in 6 years from now, and Scotty would still only be 30 years old. And the other guys would be 26, 27, and 28 years old. This is your time to do that. And listen, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if KD wants out of Houston, don't sleep on Toronto. Do I think it's a smart trade by the Raptors? Well, I should rephrase that. Do I think it will help the Raptors? Maybe not necessarily, but it will help them long term. Because if you bring in KD, and just by bringing in KD, you are able to get rid of that Yak contract because you need big money contract in there. So say Houston is a team that will take 2 first-round picks, 3 first-round picks, and Jakob Poeltl. Screw it. Even 4 first-round picks and Jakob Poeltl. You might do that. You might do that. Because now you'll get KD in there, which automatically will make you maybe even one of the top 2 favorites in the East with Kevin Durant in there, because people are delusional. They just think like, oh, KD's there, with the Rockets. Sometimes we've seen this again. I'm not saying that they're going to win it with KD because it just hasn't worked. Houston looked like they were going to be a workhorse, an instant contender with KD, and they got bounced by the Lakers in the first round. But if that's a chance for you to essentially contract-wise take a step back to take 2 steps forward, it's not the worst idea, right? Because you get Kevin Durant, and that's just in itself an asset. Honestly, like no team will do this. But if you gave up 3 first-round picks and Jakob Poeltl and a young guy, whatever, for Kevin Durant, let's say you have young guys to give, right? Grady Dick, throw him in there. See you later. Why can't you trade Kevin Durant at the trade deadline and get, 2 of your firsts back, I guess? Now, I guess anyone can counter argue and say, like I'm saying, if the KD thing wasn't working, you'd still be able to fetch 2 first-round picks in return for him at the deadline. But to be honest, it's too much hassle and too much work and too much risk. You might as well just trade Yak and get a first back, right? So I don't know. I don't know what Toronto does, but I think they're the best bet, like I said, because they've been able to draft young and they have young guys, I almost feel like waiving and stretching Jakob Poeltl is the answer, man. Or keep him. But if you keep him, this is the core you're going to have. And again, what's to say they can't get better next year? They could, because these guys are all young. And maybe when you have Emmanuel quickly back, so I don't know. You have a good coach. Darko had some games where he wasn't great, but overall he's a good coach. I think he proved that in this playoff series. So my last point, I guess, is run it back. Use that 19th pick, and you can't trade CMB. You can't trade Jacoby Walter. You obviously can't trade Scotty Barnes, and you can't trade Jamal Shed, in my opinion. There's no reason to. They're young enough. They're a good group. They like each other. If someone wants to give you something for Brandon Ingram, sure. Or RJ Barrett, sure. Because at least there you have that guy in Jacoby that can fill in that spot. Your starting lineup next year should be Emmanuel Quickly, Jacoby Walter, CMB, Scotty Barnes, and a big. Now, again, it's probably going to be Jakob Poeltl. But if it's not Jakob Poeltl, there you go. Pick up a big from free agency. Why can't you get a Kada, right? Or something like that. And, I just think that the Raptors are in a good position and they should, not panic. Just like Orlando, just like Atlanta. but the Raptors are in a really good place. They have their coach, they have their superstar, and they have young talent around them. That's great. That's all you can ask for, really. So a bright future ahead for Toronto. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Really enjoyed kind of breaking down the losing teams, and we'll do it again after the semifinals. But yeah, look out for my next podcast tomorrow. I'll be previewing the NBA semifinal round. We have 4 great series: Philly taking on New York, Detroit taking on Cleveland in the East, and in the West, it's the Wolves, which with some good news, Ant Edwards might be back sooner than we think. The Wolves against the Spurs, and the Lakers against the Thunder. Should be a fun round. I'm excited to watch it and get it going. So I'll talk to you all on the next podcast where we will preview, and I will make some picks for the NBA playoffs and their semifinals. Talk to you all on that one. Later.